Welcome to the Wellbeing and Career World podcast. I'm delighted to be chatting with founder of The Start Effect. She's a passionate storyteller and lifelong learner. Sarah has worked with kids for almost 20 years in after-school programs, mentoring programs, and as a children's book writer and illustrator, as well as a kids yoga instructor. Sarah received her Master's in Digital Marketing Communications from West Virginia University in 2021. She is the ARA of SCBWI Pennsylvania, West, and the president of the Pittsburgh Chapter of IAW. After living in New York, Vermont, Virginia, Texas, and Maryland, Sarah now lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with her husband, their 4 kids, 2 dogs, and books in every room. When she's not writing, drawing, or getting digital, Sarah loves hitting the water on her stand-up paddleboard, practicing her ukulele, trying out a new recipe in the kitchen, or finding zen on her yoga mat. And on today's podcast, we'll be chatting about digital wellness. Very well, welcome to the podcast, Sarah Maynard. A very good, I think it's morning where you are, Sarah.
It is morning where I am. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No, don't be too excited. Honestly, it's me you're chatting to. So generally, Sarah, so where are you right now on planet Earth?
I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And give listeners a little idea, where is that in relation to the big US of A, north, south, east, west?
So it's the northeastern part. So Pennsylvania is kind of like long and wide. And a lot of people will think that we're over near Philadelphia, near New York, but we're actually about 6 hours west of that.
Okay.
So
wow.
A little closer. I'm right up next to Ohio and pretty close to like Michigan and Lake Erie. So.
Oh, pretty cool. So what about then the weather? I always ask the weather. I know it's kind of summertime there. What's it like? Is it hot and sticky or?
Pittsburgh weather is one of those that they'll tell you, wake up in the morning, wait a couple hours. If you don't like the weather, it's going to change.
All right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, yesterday we had like a downpour in the middle of the day, but it was gorgeous and sunny the rest of the time. So we get a little bit of everything.
And is it, I mean, we're not going to get a conspiracy theory here for global warming, but is it getting hotter, do you think, or is the weather changing significantly?
I don't know that I notice.
You're just getting on with life.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
That's the best. I tell you, in Dublin, it's September tomorrow, I think it is. Yeah, it is. It's been unusual. I'm not going to say unusually hot. It's been quite warm and humid, which is nice. I don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. But you always know about the grass. The grass is kind of a bit burnt. It's not as green as what it could be. And they're giving these hose pipe bans. Do you get them in the States? These hose pipe bans where you can't use your hose pipe?
Oh, yes. Some places do. We don't have that here in Pennsylvania that I know of.
Right.
We get enough. We have quite a bit of rain. I have a friend that when she moved here, she said that if she thinks it rains more in Pittsburgh than it does in places like Seattle that are known for like raining all of the time.
Oh, right. Okay.
I don't know if that's true, but there's a lot more cloud cover than she was ready for.
I think we should become meteorologists because I think it's an Irish thing because we love talking about the weather in Ireland. It's the first thing we do when we meet somebody. Oh, it's going to be a nice day. It's going to be a rainy day today. Okay, enough about my boring stuff of Ireland. So I gave a little introduction about your background. So can your listeners know a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I am a homeschooling mom to 4 kids. Well, 3 now. My oldest just started high school a week ago. So he opted to go to an specific arts academy. So he's really excited about being there. But so I homeschool my younger 3, and I own the Start Effect, which is all about helping us restart and get back to that finding balance between being online and unplugged. And I kind of came about this like sideways. I got my master's degree in digital marketing communications. But I've always been so fascinated about how we communicate, not only with each other, but how we communicate with ourselves. And the being online and the digital part of our life, that digital world has kind of upset our balance in talking to ourselves and talking to other people, both online and in the physical world. So with that fascination has kind of got me where I am now.
Cool. So what about then, Sarah? So what is for a dummy like myself, what is digital marketing? I mean, what
Yeah.
generally the simplistic way of answering it?
Mhm. So digital marketing is any way that you market your products, your services, yourself through your personal brand in the digital world. So that's anything from email marketing to your website to paid ads to social media, anything that you use the internet to do and to get your message out there, that's digital marketing.
And I mean, especially in the world now, I mean, I'll be honest with you, even when I look at the phone or whether the iPad and you flick through, and there just seems to be so much information out there.
It's a
And
lot.
it's very hard to know what's real and what's fake. And I mean, does like online marketing or digital marketing, does it contribute to like a negative well-being kind of? Do people get frustrated or
Oh, yeah. I think overwhelmed is the word I hear a lot because it is a lot. I was just actually looking earlier this week at like how much information is available to us on the internet, and it's like 1,200 petabytes, which is, I don't know, it's got 12 zeros at the end of it. So it's so much information. And it's coming at us so fast all of the time. And one thing that we as a society have not done well because the internet's still very new,
yeah,
right? In comparison to other things. And we've just kind of let it creep in and just be there. And there's beginning to be more and more regulation on it, but we haven't done the work in our own on our own side to create some more boundaries. So for example, like when cable came out and there were, I mean, you had 1,000 channels or what, hundreds of channels really. You could very easily just turn off your TV. Well, I say easily, but it was all, we were getting into that mindset a little bit already,
yeah,
but,
yeah,
but you could turn your TV off and you would leave the room and it wouldn't come with you. And
yeah.
you could go outside, you could do something else. But now we carry these devices in our pockets and we haven't created those same kinds of boundaries for ourselves. And that's contributing to the constant overwhelm and the feeling like it's just never away.
It's amazing because even when, say, for example, there's a celebrity or an actor or somebody that's high profile in business, and they'll say something. And I remember I'd probably go to bed and I would read something that individual allegedly has said. And then the following morning, there'll be a different article about the same individual, and it would contradict what that person has
Mm-hmm.
said. And I'm going, I'm sure I'm sure he said that last night, but he didn't say what he meant with that. And it's just very difficult. So what about then? I'm trying to be neutral here. I am with this question. I mean, we
Yeah.
talk about a lot of negativities and stuff like that, but are there any positivities with social media? Is there any positives? I mean, or is it just
Oh
all bad?
yeah. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of positives. And I think if we look at the younger generations, we can really start to see that. Because, for example, take someone who maybe is living in a small town who doesn't feel like there's anyone that they know that they can use as an example, that they could see themselves growing into as a mentor, any of those kinds of things. But because of social media, because of the internet, they can connect with those people. They can find community and people that are like them and that understand the things that they're talking about, even if the people in their physical world do not.
Right.
Um, so that I think is a huge positive. And one big positive, I was actually talking with a friend about this yesterday, that we've seen specifically with the younger generation is how much more comfortable they are being authentic in themselves, and unapologetically authentic. Sometimes a little too much, but that's a teen for you. But
Right.
but they seem to be able to, because they can find that community and they can find those people that are like them. It seems to be easier for them to say, you know what, this is who I am and I'm okay with that.
Right.
And talking about harder issues like mental health and things along that avenue, and really tearing down some of those stigmas. My oldest actually had a friend text him and say, "Hey, I'm going to be offline for a couple days. I need to take some steps back for my mental health." And they were all like, cool, awesome. And everyone was like, great, we'll see you when you get back. We'll be here. And there was no other talk about it. That was it. They were like, thanks for letting us know. We'll make sure not to be being like, where are you? What's going on? Are you okay? So they seem to be doing a lot in making their lives better that way. And I think we can have a lot to learn from how they do that.
Is it then, I mean, what we see in social media, so say, for example, you have a lot of these shows on, and they have, men with amazing bodies and women with amazing bodies,
Yes.
and they have these fast cars, and they're selling beautiful properties and stuff like that. Is that, in your own opinion, is that a false reality that maybe is adding to these issues that people have mental health or might be a little bit stressed for what they're seeing? Are they trying to compete with something that's really not real?
Oh yeah, I think that's become even more prevalent, and we have to combat it and it's hard because we have to do it ourselves. We have to curate our own feeds and make sure that we're limiting the amount of those kinds of things that we're seeing, which it's not possible to really completely eliminate them, but you can really limit it, which is really helpful. But it is okay. Well, let's start with when at the start of social media, they all kind of grew out of a website called Hot or Not, which basically was just two guys who said, you know what, we're just going to post pictures of people, mostly women, and people are going to vote whether they're hot or not.
Right.
And that was it. That was the whole thing.
Okay.
and Mark Zuckerberg used that kind of idea when he was creating Facebook. And that's how we end up with this liking culture that has sprung out of that. And so people were always trying to say, oh, these are the best things that are doing. I'm doing this amazing stuff. Here's all this. I'm so great. Everything about life is great. And I think especially since in the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, I think we started to see a little bit more of people saying, you know what, no, it's not all awesome. Sometimes things are really bad. And and it was something that the whole world at once could say, yeah, it's really bad. And I think we came together a little bit about that. And I'm hopeful that we're going to start to see a shift in how we present ourselves online and how people use the online space. But there definitely is that underlying current that we're fighting against, because it was created to get likes, to get people to say how great you are, really, like and so we're kind of fighting that back and forth. And but we're seeing some newer apps that I think are trying to combat that a little bit and opening it up to more authenticity, and not that here's my shiny wall that I hide behind, but don't look past the edges of my picture frame.
It is interesting you say that. There was an article here a few days ago in the paper. I don't know if it made the States, but it was about a dating app. And one of the staff or ex-staff reported saying that when they knew a client membership was about to expire, they would then start sending messages or something to a client to say that they were interested in dating them, to hopefully get them to renew their membership. So the reason I'm saying this is because, and not specifically to focus on the dating side, because when you look at a dating app, all you're seeing is pictures, and they can say anything they want. They can say in the bio, I'm an amazing person with a great six-pack or whatever. I have whatever, like, and then you either meet them or you don't meet them, and it depends on your perception, your reality, whether you're disappointed by the reality or what you have seen on the dating app. But the reason I asked is because obviously you're from digital marketing background. Is do the companies psychologically know what humanity kind of thrive on? Trying to get it. When you go to a supermarket and the shelves are stacked in a certain way, because they know you're going to look at the middle aisle, the middle part of the shelf first, and then your eyes will probably go to the bottom and then probably to the top, depending. So they know what you're attracted to initially. So is that part of the process, do you think, that we're because of who we are, they know what we want? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. They definitely, and marketers around the world definitely use that kind of model that we understand the psychology about why someone does the thing that they do. And that's why great marketing campaigns, that's the word I'm looking for, are always really built around stories, because we connect so much with stories. And that's one of the reasons that like influencer marketing has really just kind of blown up and exploded and become a really viable way for people to get their products and services and stuff out there, because the story that influencer has already created, they've already created a relationship with that person through the story that they're telling, whether that story is completely authentic or, they're playing a role. Unfortunately, there's no way for us on the other side to know, right? Yeah. But that's definitely I think, a place that it's going, because there's that story and that relationship. And marketers know that. Marketers know how to sell things. That's why they keep marketing, keep getting jobs.
Don't get me wrong, it's all business. I get it. It's all business.
Yeah.
I get it.
But I think the best companies that are doing marketing in a way that is authentic and is in a way that they're trying to better the society, is looking at those really authentic stories and starting to tell things that are more true and universal.
When did this, Sarah, happen? I mean, with regards to this influencers, I had no idea. I must have been under a rock, because it's all of a sudden. I'll be honest with you, Sarah, I actually thought Facebook was a platform where you could have a bit of fun with people that that maybe you've worked in one country and another country, and all of a sudden you want to keep in touch with them and you kind of share funny moments and so. And then I realized, oh no, it's not like this. It's kind of like, you get pictures put up of, I made a cake today, and I'm scratching my head going, have I missed something? And then all of a sudden you realize you get these influencers, and I've no criticism against them, because they're doing what they're doing and they're happy. So, well, maybe they're not. But when did all this start? When does all this influence? Because I used to remember this as celebrity. So I would look at people like heroes for me, and it was like the likes of Tom Cruise and sports people, Roy Keane and stuff like that. So when did all this start? I
think as social media has grown, what we've seen is this shift from those. I mean, we still definitely have those celebrity endorsers, right? Especially for bigger companies. But smaller companies are realizing that when you're looking at your target audience, if you find an influencer who has a strong following of people who are made up of your target audience, then you're going to have a better return on investment to invest with that influencer than to run ads somewhere, because of that relationship that they have. And there's a lot of talk about even people with smaller followings. They're called micro influencers, people that only have a couple thousand followers. But because the return on investment is so good for these companies, that it becomes a really viable way to market. Now, as to when that happened, I feel like it's just kind of just like the internet has done with a lot of things. It just kind of creeps in, and then all of a sudden we're like, what happened? This is a thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real sneaky like that.
I tell you, so as we're chatting there, this came to my attention here on my right hand side. Obviously, because it's quite warm here, I have a bottle of deodorant, right? Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting. We talk about marketing, and this is where you kind of get sucked in. And we'll move on to the digital well-being part now in a moment, but just to give listeners an idea how you get sucked into this type of stuff. The advertisement, I'm not going to say what company it is, but it says for a sustainable future. And then they have a little icon that says recycle, and then it says the can is made from recyclable aluminium, and then the product was assembled in a factory using 100% renewable grid electricity. Now, the interesting thing is, you look at that and you go, oh, that's kind of environmentally friendly. But maybe it's not. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to say. It's very hard to know what's real and what's not real. So what is then digital well-being? So we'll move away from all that kind of positivity and negativity stuff. So let's move on to the good stuff. So what is digital well-being?
Yeah, so digital well-being, you also may have heard it called like digital health or digital wellness, but it's being intentional and forming a healthy relationship with technology, both in how you use it for work, which so many of us do, and how we use it in our personal life. Because our lives are really lived now in two worlds, the physical world and the digital world, and they impact and affect each other. So it's that looking at what you're doing digitally to make sure that you're doing, that you're on the things that you want to do, doing the things that you want to do, and you're making an intentional choice. I read a quote the other day that talked about digital mindfulness is really about making sure that you are intentionally choosing what you're doing, which is hard because a lot of times, and the way that a lot of these apps are designed is to keep you there, to keep you mindlessly scrolling, mindlessly playing, I don't know, Candy Crush or whatever. But they're designed to suck you in and keep you doing it. So it's that choice that we make and things that we help ourselves with, help put in place different things to help us make those choices and pull us out of the rabbit hole when we've been, following too many things on TikTok.
Does that include, like, don't get me wrong, I mean, I do look at TikTok because it kind of makes me realize how normal my life is. When I see adults dancing at a camera, I kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm actually doing okay. Yeah, I'm actually okay. I'll say nothing. So, what about then the likes of the WhatsApps and the Signal, all these Messenger and stuff like that? Is there a way then to, because obviously if you get a text message from a friend and it's very hard to fully understand or reciprocate what they've actually meant, and sometimes it can make you agitated or annoyed or angry. Is there a way to kind of maintain that as well and make sure you manage that?
Yeah. So the first thing that I always say, so when you get either a text message from somebody or you've got a comment on a social media post, our first initial reaction is like, oh, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them. I've got exactly what I want to say. Yeah. A lot of times though, that is going to result in you looking at that later going, oh, that's not what I meant.
Right.
So the first step is to put it down. Just put your device down, set it down, turn it off.
Put it down.
And it's a habit we have to practice because it's not something that, because these devices have been, they're designed for us to keep holding on to. Yeah. So we have to actively start saying, oh, you know what? Hold on. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to think it through a little bit. And especially when you're getting text messages and stuff from friends and family and colleagues, coworkers, if you are, and you can ask for clarification, certainly. Yeah. But if it's something that you're like, I really have no idea, it is still okay to call.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But this is one that, so I heard a story about a woman that had gotten a text message that from a number she didn't know that had said a family member of hers was in jail and needed bail. And all right. The first thing that she did was send the money. She was like, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, fine, here, you get them out. And I was like, if you had set it down for a second and thought for a second and called your family member and said, hey, like if you get them on the phone, obviously they're not in jail, so you don't need to send any money. But it was a scammer who ended up getting money from her because she didn't take, and of course now afterwards, hindsight's 2020, you're looking at it like, well, obviously I should have called, I should have texted her number, I should have, all of these things that were like, yeah, those are the things I should have done. But because it's not something that we're used to have happening, these are new things that are popping up for us.
Yeah.
But in having this conversation, so even just the listeners listening right now, this is something, when something happens like that, when you get those text messages that are like, your account has been compromised, click this link. Don't click the link. Don't click the link.
Yeah. Step away from the phone.
Step away, take a minute.
Yeah.
And because everything moves so fast on the internet and online, we feel like we have to move just as fast, and we don't. So one thing I like to tell parents, and especially teens, because they just live in the fast lane at all times, which can be really dangerous for the internet and a number of other things. But but that, if your phone was off and you didn't get that message, what is the worst thing that would have happened?
Well, that's the thing. It's
Most of the time it's not. It would be fine if you text them back 2 hours later, 3 hours later, the next day.
Yeah.
And so much of it is empowering ourselves to say, it's okay if I don't respond right away. That's all right.
It's funny as you're saying that, because I've gone back to the email now. So not that you had like your WhatsApp and your Signal and stuff like that. And I just found I was, and this is not to be mean to any of my friends out there, but I found that my time would be spent just texting. And I would go, and I'm going to call them out on this. I know this happened to you, Sarah, where you then go to phone them up and then they don't answer.
Yep.
And then a few moments later on, they continue to text you. And they go, I'm sorry, just a bit busy at the moment. You're like, well, we can get this conversation done in about 2 or 3 minutes. And then you can then get on with your life. So I've decided my own self is that I have certain individuals that I just email. It's not because I don't like them. It's just email for me is that I can get back to the email and answer it when I'm ready. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so important, because every aspect of this is so incredibly personal. You have to figure out what is going to work for you, for your situation. And that's going to change depending on what season of life you are in. It's and that's why we have to start over. We have to do things, come back to things and look at it again and make new decisions and make new choices. But it starts with saying that you're going to be mindful about it and deciding to make that choice.
Can I ask you something, Sarah? I know we didn't speak about this before, but or planning this, but this is interesting to me. Do you know when you see those posts, right? And they're like, you see them on the business website that begins with the L. I'm not going to say which one it is, but it says, I'm delighted, or I am proud to announce, I am delighted to announce, I am proud to announce. What on earth is that just self-promotion of a company and an individual? I mean, is that realistic now? I am delighted. We've reached record profits. I'm now working for Joe Blogs. You know what I'm trying to get at here? Is that the way? It's all personal branding. Is that what it is?
I think a lot of it is personal branding for sure, especially on that particular site. But overall, I think we have a lot of personal branding going on, but people often don't think about it that way.
Right.
And sometimes they're just, wanting to be transparent about what they're doing. Not that this happens with a lot of people, but I think there are definitely some people, when they post about something like that, they're like, oh, I'm so excited for this. I can't wait for this. This is really great. I think sometimes, in a way, they're trying to make themselves be excited about that thing.
Oh, okay.
Which, I mean, for sure, definitely people are excited about new positions and things that they've done well, for sure. Absolutely. But because there's this screen in between us, right? You don't get that whole picture.
No.
You don't get the body language. You don't get all of those tiny little cues that you would get if you were sitting across from someone. So we just kind of have to take things at face value and say, if you want to know more, engage with that person, find out. Are you really excited?
So what would you say, Sarah, to an individual or a client who wants to manage the time that they spend on their phone while also engaging with a real life person in front of them? Because you do see it sometimes where you could be out with individuals or friends and you're having a conversation and the phone goes off, or they get a text message and conversation stops because they answer their phone or they engage with a text message. How then can somebody manage that?
One thing that I tell clients a lot is to say, just pick one meal where you are sitting and eating with other people, that you put your phone in a different room. Set it somewhere else so you can't even pick it up to Google something during a conversation, and commit to doing that for a week. So it's a small step, but I mean, I have not yet had anyone come back and tell me, nope, that didn't work. It was terrible. I hated all of it. What I do here is I had such a great conversation with my partner last night because we've been working on this. I finally feel like I connected with my teen.
Right.
That one was a big one. Like that, and just because and it takes a little bit of time. So doing it just 1 or 2 days isn't going to work. You really need that like full week. And oftentimes you're going to find that you enjoy it so much that you get so much out of that, even if it's just half an hour, that you start to feel a little bit lighter. And that can be the doorway to opening that, making more of those boundaries and setting more time away from our device.
What about then, Sarah? So this is going to be an interesting one, right? I'm going to name and shame my dad, because about a month ago he was sitting down watching, looking at his phone, and on the phone he said such and such an actor has died. Mm-hmm. And obviously that can be upsetting because if you like the actor, you like the individual, and it turned out that it was false. The article was from an unknown media source. So how then can you manage that? I mean, for researching information that is factual and not so factual, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually, just yesterday, my son and I, driving home from school, were talking about this because he had watched a video that said that teens in another country did not have school dances. And I was like, really? They have no school dances at all? And he was like, yeah, that's what the video said. And I was like, one video.
Right.
You watched one video and you made a decision. And he was then, no, I mean, because we've talked about this a lot in our house, obviously. Right. And then you could see it come over him like, oh, right. I was supposed to find more than one source that says the same thing. And that's really hard because that puts the work on us to go look and say, okay, yep, here are 4 sources saying the same thing. It's likely that that's actually true. And so I think about that a lot with what they call fake news, and people post, just like you were saying, posting things that aren't true. Yeah. And because of how the internet works, it goes so fast. I mean, fake news is not a new thing. I mean, ever since people have been able to share information, it's, the rumors, the just talking about people, all of that. But now in an instant, in 2 hours, you could have something all the way around the world, or faster, depending on how many followers you have, right?
Yeah.
So, but one thing that I really caution people is, if you are going to post it, if you're going to say, yep, I read this, isn't this really interesting? Do a little bit of extra research before you post it. Yeah. Because you want to make sure that you're sharing, the idea that you're sharing it is because you want to help other people usually. And if we're sharing information that's false, then that's not helpful to anybody. Yeah. It just perpetuates this culture. But the hard, it definitely puts the weight on us on the other side to say, okay, well, hold on, I heard a thing, and now I'm going to find a couple of trusted news sources and look there.
Honestly, you're dead right, because the amount of stuff I've been sent, I'm looking at it going, what? I only seen that person yesterday. No, they can't. So it's kind of this type of stuff where, and it can catch you out, as you said, Sarah, because if you start sharing it, before you know it, a lot of people have it, and it kind of makes it the individual who initially shared it look like a bit of an idiot, because they haven't actually done the background work to make sure that what they've sent is actually factual and true. What about then? Can you explain the 3-org challenge?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So it's a challenge. So I actually changed the word challenge to reboot.
Reboot. Reboot.
The reboot. So it's rest, recharge, and restart. So really it ends up being 4 hours now with the reboot. But
right.
But so I took the word challenge out because it's already challenging enough to do. And so in thinking about that, I was like, oh, you know what, maybe I want to make it easy. I want to make it something where you can take a couple of steps and just like, putting your phone or your device away while you're eating meals, being present in the moment with other people in the physical world. And so some other things that we're talking about is a lot of things surrounding digital wellness and digital mindfulness. One being looking at the apps that you're using and setting time limits for yourself. So if you're looking at all of the time you spend online and you're like, wow, I was on Facebook for like 4 hours this week. That's a lot. And for me, and that could be different for other people. So this is like you have to decide what's the right amount of time for you, and then give yourself those boundaries. And both iOS and Android devices have ways for you to do this. There's also specific apps that you can get that will help you set timers and set limits for specific actions that you're doing. But as I said, those apps are there to keep you in, even when you're on like on a Netflix. It'll ask you, hey, you want to keep watching? It'll just keep streaming for you for a while. Yes. It just keeps going. And it takes a good long while before it asks you if you still want to keep going. So putting those things in place on our own end and saying, you know what, I'm only going to spend half an hour a day on social media, or I'm only going to spend an hour a day on TikTok, because that's how it helps you. Maybe you're using it to de-stress. Maybe it helps you get away. Maybe it's a place where you're learning information. So, but it's about, and it's so personalized. So you have to think about your own space and what's going to work for you. So that's really what the 3R reboot is about, is looking at your own space and putting in place some tools to help you have a healthier, more intentional relationship with the digital world.
What about then, Sarah, with like giving incentives, say, for parents for their kids who are always on either their computer games or their phone or whatever? Mm. Is it a way you could say to the kids, look, you can have an hour, say, tomorrow if you go out and do 2 hours exercise, like you go out and play with your friends for 2 hours, or you play sports for 2 hours, and then by the time they probably want the phone after they come back, they'd be so exhausted to just fall asleep. I mean, is that a way for parents maybe to get around this as well, especially if they're struggling with kids who don't want to go out and play?
Yeah, absolutely. We use that in our own house. My kids, one of the things we do since we homeschool is they have a list of things every day that are for their education that they need to complete before they're allowed to have any of their digital devices for playing video games or watching movies or things like that. So it's about helping them put in place those limits and having the conversation. So when my oldest got a cell phone, I have a digital device agreement that we used, and it's actually on my website free if anybody wants it. And it has I designed it because I needed it. And I needed a way to have this conversation and say, here are the things that we need to talk about, because this is stuff that you're going to encounter. And here are some ways that I want to make sure that we're setting up some boundaries so that you have time away, and making sure it's a conversation. And I think that's the biggest piece, especially for kids and teens, because they're going to have to deal with this their whole life. So just like you would teach them how to drive a car or use an oven, any of those things, you teach them how to use it by putting in boundaries and perimeters and sitting down with them and learning how to use it, right?
Yes.
And we have to do that same thing with the digital world with our kids. So including them in that conversation. And we've had conversations with them. The same thing that I'm asking adults to do for this reboot is, how long do you think you need on this app? How long is good for you? And use that as kind of a back and forth, because sometimes they'll say, well, I need 10 hours. No, you don't need 10 hours on YouTube a day. Not a thing. That's good. We don't need that. And so just helping them kind of realize what is really helpful, and helping them make that intentional choice, and teaching them to make that intentional choice so they can keep doing it, because this online world isn't going away.
I'm on your website, thestarteffect.com, and be a little bit nosy. So we've spoken about already the
please.
3R reboot. And can I just ask you, what's the thoughts before hashtags? What's that about?
Yeah, so that's my blog where I go a little more in depth on certain aspects of the digital world. Whereas like I use Facebook and Instagram for just short snippets. I really put a lot more information in those blog posts. But yeah.
Cool. What about then you have you have a store, kind of interesting. You have stickers and magnets, but you have these journals for teens. So what's that for? There's a
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Yeah. So one thing that I am a big I don't know, champion for, I guess, I don't know, is taking that pause, putting that device down and taking a minute to think through what it is that you actually want to say, how you feel. So on the internet, there's no eraser. It's one thing I tell teens all the time. Once you put it out there, you no longer really have control over it. Yeah. Unfortunately, someone can screenshot it. It can be searched by somebody who knows how to find things. And so even if you're in private chat conversations on different social media apps, so there are ones that are encrypted, and that's a whole nother conversation, but just to make them aware and be very intentional about what they're posting. And so I created the journal to really help have that space that you can take those feelings that you're having and write out. I have pages for like thinking through how a conversation might go, for what some options for a digital detox, and then thinking about how you felt about it. And then just pages for creating and brain dumping and taking that time to get off the internet and think through some stuff. And then if you want, you can rip it up, you can black it out, you could burn it, you could do whatever, and it no longer exists. Unlike if you posted it on Snapchat or something.
It's interesting you said that. Is it a case here? Have you ever heard of modifying of people's posts or information? I know you can get hackers and you can get people hacking your information, especially if it's online. But has it happened that you're aware of, that you put an article out, for example, or you put a post up, and then years later, as you said, it's always there? Can somebody modify that post and kind of make out that, oh, this is what the person said, and then you reply and go, no, I didn't say that. Somebody has manipulated that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with photo editing apps are fantastic right now. Yeah. So you can really, because you could make a video of someone saying something based on just a video they have on the internet, and you can change the way their mouth moves and have them say something entirely different. Yes. Which is really, sometimes people do it very humorously, and you can tell that it's done humorously, and but there is that danger that someone can take things and change it, and yeah, there's no simple solution to that, unfortunately, because we do live in this world, and we are communicating, and we are talking with each other. So the only real kind of course of action that you have if someone does that is to go back and say, no, here's my original post. Yeah. This is what I actually said. And then kind of go from there.
It's frightening because as well, they can actually probably take something out of context. So say, for example, you've made a statement. Definitely. And they just take one sentence, and then that sentence doesn't give the full picture of what you're trying to say. I'm not trying to scare anybody listening to this, but this is the facts that's going on today in today's world, unfortunately, which there's good in social media, but there's also idiots out there that want to ruin a lot of stuff. Oh, this thing as well, sir. Just before one more question to ask before we go or chat about. Yeah. But what do you think of this, where you've these individuals who are on social media? And I mean, I can't really talk for myself, because for me personally, I'm on Wellbeing Career World. I don't show my face. It is what it is. But generally, do you know when you get these people that make these sarcastic, strange comments about people that made a post, and sometimes they've been quite hurtful and quite mean? and their name is like Joe Blogs 12345
Yep.
or Banana 123. Why isn't it in this world that that's stopped? Why don't we have, you know, irrelevant if you show a picture or not of the individual, why isn't it not verified every person or every user that's on a site? You know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there are different sites that are popping up that are asking to verify each individual person. But as the internet has evolved and as these apps and platforms have evolved, they're playing catch up a lot of times. I feel like
Right.
oh yeah, we messed that up, we'll figure out how to fix it, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
So they have to do all that coding on the back end and figure out how to make it work and then test it, and it just all takes a long time. So they're slowly moving that direction, I think. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be slow.
There was one girl I had seen. She was very clever. She had posted something, I think it was on TikTok, and a person sent a comment, and the person's it was a weird name. It was like whatever, Banana 12345 6, whatever you want to call it. And she didn't reply to the guy and or girl, however it was. I don't know who was behind it. And the guy replied back and said, "Why not?" And says, "Well, if you're not willing to verify who you are, or give your real name, or show your identity, I won't respond to you." And
Yeah.
and that was the end of that conversation. So I actually thought that was a clever thing to do, of confronting the situation, but say to the individual, "Look, I don't know who you are. I'd like to engage, but I'm not engaging in this conversation because you're not willing to show the real you," if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Because people will, because there's this screen in between us, there's this idea of anonymity, and people will definitely hide behind that. And unfortunately, a lot of times the people that are hiding behind that are doing things that are and saying things that are really just you wouldn't walk up to somebody that you didn't know who was doing something in the parking lot and say those things to them.
No,
absolutely not.
No.
But we haven't, because we're still figuring out how to work together in this world. We haven't put in place those same kinds of parameters and social pressures. So the trolls keep coming up. But I think exactly what the poster did was perfect. You don't want to feed the trolls. No. If you feed the trolls, they're just going to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. So a lot of times I've seen people that will say, "You know what, I'm just going to address something that's happening in my comments just to address it, but I'm not commenting. I'm not going to engage with those people," which is exactly what you want to do, because they're going to move on to someone who will engage, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone to, for whatever reason, to enter a dialogue that in some way they think is going to end up with them looking better. But a troll's a troll, unfortunately.
that happened to me a couple of years ago, where I had done a podcast with a wonderful person, inspirational, that was working for, was it SpaceX or NASA at the time? And we posted the podcast out there. It was on LinkedIn and so on. And then there was this person, and there was no name to the person, but the person just wanted to have a go at the environmental side of, of rockets going into space, right? And I tried to engage with the individual on LinkedIn, and it was the worst thing I could have done, because my ration behind that was thinking, well, if I can try and explain why, everybody has different beliefs, everybody has different opinions, but the person just got more aggressive and more aggressive and more. Yep. So it makes you realize that. I mean, getting back to that then, can you turn comments off, and why don't people turn comments off on their social media? Is it part of the algorithm that they want to engage? Is that what it's all about?
A lot of times people won't turn comments off because they want that engagement, because that does help boost your stuff to go see, to be shown to more people. But certainly when you are in, it's one thing that I tell people a lot is your page is your page. You can turn comments off. You can block people. You can unfollow people. You can restrict people's access. Like, just because you have a public profile on a site does not mean that you have to engage with all of these people.
Yeah.
You have control, and empowering people to know that, because a lot of times we'll get on there and we'll say, oh, well, but I really should leave this open because I might be able to help them. With a troll, unfortunately, they're not ready to be helped yet.
Yes. Yeah.
And no one has really had you're not winning any arguments on social media. That's just, you're not. One of my go-tos, if someone will comment on one of my posts in a way that is I don't feel like they're going to be open to engaging in a conversation, that it's just going to be mostly yelling back and forth at each other.
Yes.
I'll invite them to send me a direct message, to DM me, because usually that stops them and they don't want to engage anymore. and then if they do want to engage, then I know they are open to having a more constructive and conversation and learn from each other. But usually the like, okay, well, let's take this over here and talk about it, shuts them down real fast.
It is. It's amazing. But I think what you said there, a point that you made, which is brilliant, a statement that you have control. So if any listeners are listen to what Sarah said, you have control to do what you want to do. You know, put the phone away, ignore them, delete the app, do what you have to do. There's nobody forcing you to have a phone. There's nobody forcing you to have an iPad. There's nobody forcing you to be social media. It's, you know what I'm trying to get at. So what you said there, Sarah, brilliant. You have control. What about then the services that you provide? So say, for example, an idiot like myself is going to get in touch with you tomorrow. How does it work? Do you do groups? Do you do individuals? How does it work?
Yeah, so I do presentations for organizations, schools, professional organizations, anything and anywhere in between. And I also do one-on-one consultations with people who want a little bit more individualized attention, want to really dig into some things, and how I can help them create that balance between online and unplugged.
And you do these sessions, are they virtual or in person or both?
Most of them are virtual, but I have done some presentations in person, and I'm definitely open to doing some consultations in person for anybody that is in and around the Pittsburgh area.
Cool. I'll tell you something, I have to say, you'd be great in schools. I think the schools would have a big need, I think, for somebody like yourself with your services. So before we go, the famous last question: where are you on all the social medias? Are you on the long? Here we are talking about digital wellness.
Yes.
And the last question is: where are you on social media?
Yeah, well, you want to curate your feed with people that are going to be helpful. So I hope that I am helpful for people. But yes, so I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Start Effect.
Brilliant. Well, a big thank you to Sarah Maynard today for chatting with me about digital wellness and all things got to do with the internet and social media. I'll put the links in to getting in touch with Sarah once the podcast has been approved and released. So thanks very much to Sarah for chatting with me today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.